Jamie Babbit, you've directed both season finales of Only Murders in the Building so far. Is there extra pressure because this is a murder mystery and you're trying to wrap up the case in a satisfying way?
I wouldn't say there's extra pressure. I would say it's extra fun because a lot of times when you come in to direct an episode, you may be directing a red herring episode, and it's fun to actually get to tell the story of the murder mystery. So the plot device is really heavy, and I think as a director, whenever you have a juicy plot, you know it's going to be a great episode. So I feel very lucky.
Well, in the first season, you directed the first two, right? And then the last two. And then this one, you just directed the last two. So what was it like coming in with those last two? Like, how much are you told about during the season before, and the mystery itself before you come in for those two episodes?
Well, in the first season, I directed the first ever episode. So I directed the pilot. I feel like those are really hard because you're literally creating the vibe of the show from your mind. So just kind of the feeling and the shot selection and the costumes and the sets, and it's all new. And the casting. I feel like this year doing the finale, it's kind of a more fun roller coaster than the kind of drudgery of the first ever episode, the pilot. Um, so I prefer the end. I will say the challenge with doing the wrap up of a murder mystery is that there's a lot of expectation from the audience because they've been waiting for this episode to understand everything that's been going on. So, people are going to be just really excited to watch it, and you hope that it lives up to expectations. But you're also at the end of the season where it's kind of like when you took trail rides on horses when you were a kid. And if you were on the last trail ride, the horse would be like the entire trail ride, like trying to run to the barn because they know they're going to get fed at the end. I feel like directing the finale is tough because the crew and the actors are really tired because they've been working so hard. And they can really feel the end of the show. So they're like, "Are we done yet? Can we go? Okay, is it good?" So if there's kind of a fatigue that you have to bring in a new energy at the end of the show and really pump people up and get them excited because they're tired.
So how did you do that in this case? Because I contrary to like last season's case or finale, there is a red herring this time because you kind of think it's Cinda at first, and
Yeah,
then it turns out to be Poppy.
yeah. I think usually in most like uh if there's the last act, there's always a twist. So I do think some audiences know that there's just going to be, it's never that easy. Having done a bunch of finales on this show, it's never that easy, and that's the fun of it. So I think an audience who's familiar with the murder mystery genre knows that if we're pointing to one person, at the very end, there's going to be a twist. Okay. Um, I thought it was Cinda is so unlikable. So that was what was fun about pinning it on her because she's just an unlikable character. I mean, Tina Fey is very funny and knew how to make her really unlikable. Um, so I think the challenge for this is we had a very unlikable person that we're pinning it on, and then the twist is that the assistant who you kind of feel bad for, and you have a lot of empathy for, ends up being the killer, and then we have to twist it so that you understand that she's actually this like conniving weirdo underneath it all. Like
Yeah, because you
having
start
like
out the finale with the flashback to her life in
yeah,
Oklahoma, yeah,
yeah,
and how she just needed to get out when she found
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I guess do you like do you want to make people think it's Cinda at first, or do you also want them to like viewers to figure out themselves that it's Poppy eventually?
I really did want to make people think that it was Cinda.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was definitely part of the goal. And certainly in the mechanics of the writing and in the filmmaking, I tried to do that. Um, what was actually logistically challenging about directing this episode is that Tina was only available for, I think it was one day, and I had a lot to shoot with her. So I ended up shooting the entire murder mystery party with a double, a Cinda Canning double.
Oh, interesting.
And so at the last day, I had already shot the whole scene with the double, but I just needed the close-ups of Cinda. And so Tina came in and we shot all of her close-ups. And in the final cut, anytime there's like a over the shoulder or something slightly wider, it's not Tina.
I
That's
noticed
so much.
that because anytime it's like the three of them talking is like over her right shoulder.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely a double. And the other person who was working on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel for most of it, and I only had one day as well, was Howard.
Hmm.
So I also have a Howard double. So I notice it when I watch it that there's certain shots where I'm cutting the cutting the frame just where you would see Howard, or you're seeing a little piece of Howard, but it's a double just wearing the clothes.
You just had him come in to faint, that's all.
Basically. Yeah, basically.
Well, I love the killer reveal party because I mean that's the bulk of the episode right there, uh, and it's so much fun because it's all in one room, and it's like they said, like it's theater. So what was it like blocking that scene, with those logistical issues with Tina and Michael? And I guess how much rehearsal time do you have with something like that with so many people in there?
I had probably like a half an hour of rehearsal. Um, but I was excited by the challenge. There's something about the puzzle of a big giant scene with a lot of actors and all these timing issues of like you can shoot this person on this day, you can shoot this person on this day, but then you've got the double for the other days. There's something kind of geometric about figuring out how to shoot it in an efficient way. And I think we had 5 days to shoot that, maybe 4 days to shoot that party. One of my favorite movies of all time is Clue. And it really kind of reminded me of shooting that, just the comedy of it and um, the kind of people running around and
And
all
accusing
the,
each other of
yeah, it was so much fun. So I actually had a great time. And also in filmmaking, one of the most challenging things is putting all the equipment back in the trucks, moving it around New York, unpacking all of the equipment, getting set up. You shoot something, and then you have to pack everything back up in New York, put it in the trucks. So there's something nice about having that many days in one location where you can really just like focus on the performances. And the truth about Steve Martin is that he is very specific about what he likes to do. And he really likes rehearsing, and by rehearsing, I mean he's rehearsed a lot of it in his mind or figured out what he's going to do before he gets there. He is very well memorized and he's just very specific. So it's really a joy to work with him because he is so precise in what his comic choices are going to be, and he's really put a lot of thought into it before the day.
Mhm.
And then Martin Short is kind of the opposite, where he really loves spontaneity and finding the joke on the day and really kind of working the joke and doing it in a bunch of different ways. And there's a little more of a kind of give and take where he's playing with stuff once the camera's rolling. So just very different actors and a very different approach, both brilliant, but just very different. So I needed to have the time to kind of let Marty explore and find exactly what was the best approach for every line. And then for Steve, making sure that the way that he saw it in his head, that I could execute that with the specific blocking and then with all the other actors.
Mhm.
So
So
yeah,
he
and
planned out how he wanted to do the slow-mo already in his mind.
Yeah,
How many takes of that did you guys do? Because it's not just him, it's eventually everyone doing it.
everybody. Yeah. I probably ended up doing like four or five. It's obviously the thing about comedy is it usually plays, especially for Steve's physical comedy and Marty's physical comedy, in wider shots. So that was the, big wide, and they're right at the front. So I just needed the actors to be okay behind them.
Yeah, every finale has great physical comedy by Steve because he had the elevator last time. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's such a great physical comedian. So we always try to give him space to do his kind of comedy. And even the tomato bit, that's very Steve.
that's
Um,
so funny. I was like,
yeah.
how many tomatoes did he cut?
Oh God. We have a wonderful props person. I would say we cut 15.
Hmm. Did you guys use all those in a salad later?
No, I didn't. I don't think so. No, I think they probably went in the trash, sadly.
What went into the choreography for the fake death, his blood bag, and then
Yeah.
one of the funniest moments is when he just sits up and says, "We did." Like that's like the editing and then just the cut to him. It was so great. It was really funny.
Yeah. It's funny because he was laying on the ground and I was like, we were about to shoot that. And I was like, are you okay? Because obviously it's hard to lay on the ground for a long time. It like hurts. And also to sit up is like, it's not easy, especially when you're in your 70s. And Steve was like, "Oh, I'm really nervous." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because I know this is a big moment, this and this." So he really understood the mechanics of the scene and that was a funny thing. But I found actually in my career that some of the most talented actors are the ones that still get nervous when they have to do their takes.
That's good, I guess, though, right? It's like
Care, they
yeah.
care, they
Mhm.
really care, and they want to do it right. Um, so that was a tough moment, not because Steve wasn't brilliant every time, because he was, but because the blood and the piping that you have to do with all the tubes and the blood coming through. I only had a certain number of shirts and it takes a long time to clean them up. So the logistical issues are really time consuming with blood. So I was just really hoping that we were going to get it right so that I could move on because it's really time consuming.
I talked to
So
the costume designer Dana, and she said she was concerned because when you put people in lighter clothing, like it's a tell that like they're gonna get murdered, like there's gonna be blood because he wanted the blood to show in light clothing, and he
yeah,
had a light shirt on. So
yeah, yeah,
mm. I think I'm sure a lot of people did this, but once it was revealed that it was Poppy and the she said 14 sandwich, people definitely went back to the initial restaurant scene to like watch Mabel like point at the menu. So I guess like what kind of like it was a medium shot, I guess, but it's like you could see her like talking the menu and like moving her finger down to the sandwich, and then she gets a phone call. So how did you pick like that shot to include like it not giving away too much, but just enough for you to pick up on it later?
yeah. That's definitely what the thought was. Include it, but don't give it away. Eh, Having just shot the newest finale, I had to do a lot of similar shots where I was
Right.
like, okay, I want the audience to see this, but it's not until the end that they understand that what I'm shooting actually really relates to what I'm doing. So how do I distract the audience, or make the shot not quite focusing on the other clue that's going to be revealed later? That's actually like the biggest clue. Um, so yeah, it's all intentional. It's just part of the mechanics of the plot, which is what's so fun about a murder mystery, because you really are thinking logically about what the pieces of information you want to give the audience. And all of that is a nice structure for the filmmaking.
Mhm. So when you get the script for the finale or just any episode, like how do you start planning the shots in your head, or what's your process like, especially with a murder mystery like this?
Yeah. Well, I definitely first read the script. I've been lucky because I visualized the very first episode of the show. So I have a confidence that the way it looks in my head is the way it will look in the final product. Because from the original print, like sometimes I feel like filmmaking is like if you have a print button on your brain and you just press print, that's how it comes out when you read it. And I remember when I first started directing that I thought when I read it and I pressed print and filmed it and it came out, that it would look the way anyone, if they read it, that's the way it would look. And I was always so shocked when I would get sick or it would be too big of a day. So another director would do a different scene of mine as like a favor and how different it would look because it seems so obvious when you read something what it should look like. But I think that's just every director when they read it, they see it a different way. And, it seems so obvious, but it's not. I mean, that's kind of the artistry of it and the craft is everyone is going to execute a slightly different way. But to me, it's just how it looks in my head when I read it. And I just try to visualize that. And I think 20 years of craft, I know how to make the images in my head go onto the screen, how to execute them. So with shot selection and with pacing and editing and music and all that stuff is like part of your filmmaking choices. So I'm at the point in my career where um, as far as the mechanics of filmmaking and just shots. I used to see shots in my head, like when I did But I'm a Cheerleader back in the day, and I didn't know how to execute them. There was a process in figuring that out. And now I definitely know how to execute. So,
You can print them out, that's all.
yeah, how to press print and have it be effective. I think any filmmaker is a good day when every shot they did is exactly what they saw in their head. And every filmmaker is a really bad day when whatever you see on the screen when you're making it is not what you see in your head. And it's like trying to shoehorn that.
Yeah.
Like, wait, this lens is wrong. Why are we on this lens?
And then
No.
and it's hard to describe it to people like what exactly you want because you have it in your head. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, what's wrong? It looks good. I'm like, it might look good, but it's not what's in my head. So it's just frustrating me because
Mhm.
if that's you have to follow your instincts and your instincts when you first read something, that's the audience when they're watching it. So me saying like, yeah, it looks good. Sure, it looks good, but it's not what my first instinct was. And if it's not my first instinct, then it's actually wrong. Because I've now I'm someone who's read it a million times and looked at this location a million times. And so I've been kind of that's not a good place. It's better, whatever your first instinct to me, that's usually the best because that's what the audience is going to watch.
Mhm.
And a lot of times you have to remember, wait, what was my first instinct? Oh, right. I found that confusing when I first read it. Okay, how can I fix that?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
or when I read that, I felt I had this certain feeling. So I have to get the film, the image to match that feeling because so much of directing is chasing feelings
Mhm.
and
Well,
trying to realize them.
yeah. Well, for something in each finale now, you set up the new murder at the end, and so how do you go about doing that when you don't really know how the murder is going to play out next season, but you're responsible for showing Paul Rudd dying on stage, and like I guess putting enough clues that you might not even know are clues, but it's just like
100%.
you're envisioning how that scene is going to play out in your head and you're printing it and then they're going to do whatever they're going to do for the first 8 episodes or whatever next season.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the challenge of the writer's room for next season is
Mhm.
us. What was exciting about doing the finale was that Paul Rudd said, I'm happy to be in the show and I'm happy to be the murder victim. So I knew already that that was a home run because he's so great. And I think Marty's character finally being able to be on Broadway was a really fun thing for the audience too, and a promise of next season that they're going to get a lot of like Marty upstairs, downstairs, backstage, and just fun Broadway world. So I knew that was great. But to be honest, that play we were like, okay, we want to give it a sort of noir feeling. So what's the set? So we did that smoke on stage and a kind of just lighting, cool lighting, and those lampposts, and then the trench coats for both Steve and Paul. And then we knew something about a woman, and that we had to kill him. So it was an investment in that location as well, because whatever location I picked to kill him in, whatever theater, I knew was going to be the theater they were going to have to shoot in for the whole season next year. So one of the reasons I picked that theater is because it's close to Steve Martin's house.
You could just go home to take a nap in the middle of in between
yeah,
setups.
like I'm like, let Steve be near his apartment. And yeah, all the little decisions that you make, like everyone, we basically called every actor who'd ever been on the show in the building and said, can you come to the Broadway performance and be in the audience? And some people could and some people couldn't. Some people were working on stuff, and basically they were just extras. They were just in the audience, like clapping, But of course, when you do that for then the season, which I just directed, all the people who are in that audience then become much bigger parts of this season.
Yeah, it's like they could be part of it. So
Exactly. So people who didn't show up because they had other jobs didn't get to be in the
you
show.
missed out on a murder. So
yeah.
Well, lastly, what else can you tease about next season? You directed the finale again, so that's just your thing now. So, and you have to try to plan quickly. So what can fans look forward to?
Fans can look forward to Meryl Streep,
Mhm.
which is a really big, exciting, fun addition to the cast. Fans can look forward to a lot more Paul Rudd and Meryl Streep in a single scene, which they had never worked together before, so that's really fun. And they can look forward to a lot of the Broadway world, which is just a fun new setting for Marty's character. And Steve is obviously the star of the play, and Marty is the director, and Meryl's involved with the production. And just a very, very fun next season with uncovering how Paul Rudd died on stage.
Well, can't wait to see it. Jamie, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time, and congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.